I never trusted anyone, not before the world went to hell, and definitely not now. In a city ruled by neon lights and cybernetic enhancements, trust is as dead as the sun behind the smog. There's no way you can afford to let your guard down. Especially not here, in the rotting belly of Neogrid City, where betrayal is a currency traded just as freely as creds or augmentations. I've always lived in the shadows, skimming off the chaos, hacking into systems no one else could crack, running jobs for people I've never met in person and never will. It was safer that way. No faces, no names, no connections. It's how I've survived this long. If I had a motto, it'd be, trust gets you killed. In a world like this, survival is the only game. The streets are a mesh of glowing signs, broken holograms, and people who've become more machine than human. And somewhere in the midst of all that neon, something darker is hiding. I'd heard rumors, everyone had, people disappearing, coming back, different. I always thought it was just the paranoia that came with living in this wasteland where everyone's got a reason to look over their shoulder. But the whispers had gotten louder. Talk of creatures called neon skinwalkers, monsters that ripped the skin off their victims and wore it like a second suit, blending in perfectly with the rest of us. No one knew where they came from or how to stop them. No one except me, and that's the real problem. It all started about a week ago. I was running a job, nothing major, just breaking into a low security system for some quick creds. But as I dug deeper, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A file buried deep in the corporate mainframe of SynCorp, one of the biggest players in the city. A file about a secret project they were working on, Project Chrysalis. At first it didn't make sense. It looked like some weird experiment, but as I decrypted the data, the truth hit me like a bullet. SynCorp was creating the Skinwalkers. They were engineering these things, training them to infiltrate, blend in, and replace key people in the city. And they weren't just targeting anyone, they were after hackers, resistance groups, anyone who posed a threat to their control. That's when I realized I was already in over my head. I should have logged out right then and there, wiped my traces, disappeared like I always did. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was stupidity, but I kept digging. And the more I found, the more I realized this wasn't just some corporate experiment. This was a full-blown invasion. SynCorp was planning to replace us all. The worst part? I couldn't trust anyone. Not even the few people I worked with on the regular. Not that I'd ever trusted them before, but now I had to assume the worst. They could be skinwalkers too. I've always been paranoid, but this was different. This was survival. I needed help to bring down SynCorp, but how could I trust anyone when I didn't even know if the people I knew were still themselves? That's where the real fear set in. I was sitting in my apartment when I got the call. It was Rook, one of the few people I'd worked with in the past. A hacker like me, but more ruthless. She'd always played both sides, never committing to anything but her own survival. In any other world, I'd have liked her. Here, though, she was just another possible threat. Still, she had connections. The kind of connections I needed to take down SynCorp, or at least cripple them enough to make them reconsider their plan. But I couldn't shake the thought that she might already be one of them. Got a lead, her voice crackled over the encrypted line. SynCorp's moving something big tonight. You in? Her voice sounded right, but then again, the Skinwalkers were supposed to be perfect imitators. The thought made me sick. I don't work for free, Rook, I said, stalling for time while I tried to figure out what my next move was. You won't be. This is big zero, real big. We pull this off, we'll have enough creds to disappear. For good. She knew the one thing that might tempt me. I've spent my entire life trying to stay off the grid, away from the reach of corporations, gangs, and every other power-hungry faction in this city. If she was offering a way out, it was tempting. Too tempting. I hesitated, and that's when I knew I had no choice. The Skinwalkers were closing in, and if I didn't make a move soon, I was going to get caught. The only way out was through. I needed Rook. I needed someone, anyone, who could help me take SynCorp down, even if I couldn't trust her. Fine, where? I asked, my voice steady even though my insides were twisting. Gridway District, Warehouse 43, midnight, don't be late. The line went dead, and I stared at the screen for a long moment, the silence in my apartment pressing in on me. I had a choice, go and risk it, or stay hidden and wait for the inevitable. I wasn't the waiting type. The Gridway district was a wasteland, even by Neo-Grid City standards. A sea of broken neon lights and abandoned factories. No one came here unless they had a death wish or something to hide. The perfect place for a meeting like this. I arrived early, hiding in the shadows of a crumbling building across from the warehouse. The streets were empty, save for a few stray cyber rats scurrying through the trash. My heart was racing, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a warning. I checked my gear, a small custom-built EMP device designed to short-circuit any cybernetic implants within a 100-meter radius. It wouldn't kill a Skinwalker, but it might slow them down long enough for me to escape if things went bad. And they were definitely going to go bad. I wasn't naive. I knew Rook had probably sold me out. But I had no choice. SynCorp was already on my trail, and the Skinwalkers were getting closer by the hour. I needed to hit them before they hit me. Midnight came, and with it Rook. She emerged from the shadows like a ghost, her lean frame barely visible beneath her black coat. Her eyes, glowing faintly from the low-grade cyber implants she'd had installed years ago, scanned the area before landing on me. "Glad you showed," she said, her voice as casual as ever. "Wasn't sure I would," I replied, keeping my distance. "You don't trust me," she said, a smirk pulling at the corner of her mouth. "Smart. Can you blame me?" I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. She laughed softly, the sound almost genuine. "No, but you need me, Zero. We both know that." "I don't need anyone," I lied. "Sure you don't," she said, walking toward me. "But you came anyway." I didn't respond, my eyes following her every movement. If she was a Skinwalker, this was the moment. She was close enough to strike, close enough to peel away my skin and take my life. But nothing happened. She just stood there waiting. I exhaled slowly. "What's the plan?" She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes narrowing as if checking for something, or someone in the shadows. "SynCorp's got a shipment coming in, something big. I don't know what it is, but if we can get into their system while they're distracted, we can take them down from the inside." "How do you know all this?" "Connections," she said, flashing a grin. "You're not the only one with contacts, Zero." I didn't like it. It felt too easy, too convenient, but I didn't have time to argue. I followed her inside the warehouse, every instinct screaming at me to be ready for a double cross. The place was massive, a labyrinth of crates and machinery, all lit by the sickly glow of flickering neon signs. The air smelled of oil and rust, the sound of distant footsteps echoing through the hollow space. We moved quickly, making our way to a terminal near the back of the warehouse. Rook plugged in her portable deck, her fingers flying over the keys as she accessed SynCorp's system. "Almost there," she muttered, her eyes glued to the screen. I kept watch, my hand resting on the EMP device strapped to my belt. Every second that passed felt like an eternity, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I could feel them, the Skinwalkers, getting closer. "Hurry up," I whispered, my voice tight with fear. "Got it," she said, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. Before I could respond, the lights flickered, and the sound of heavy footsteps filled the air. My blood turned to ice. "Rook," I started, but it was too late. Figures emerged from the shadows, their bodies shifting and twisting, their faces peeling away to reveal the grotesque, plant-like flesh beneath. Skinwalkers. There were at least 5 of them, their eyes glowing with a sickly neon light as they closed in on us. "Shit!" Rook swore, pulling out a small pistol and firing at the nearest Skinwalker. The bullet hit its mark, but the creature barely flinched, its body absorbing the impact like it was nothing. I didn't hesitate. I activated the EMP device, the wave of energy surging through the warehouse. The Skinwalkers convulsed, their movements jerking and erratic as their cybernetic implants short-circuited. But it wasn't enough. One of them lunged at me, its claws slicing through the air as I ducked out of the way. I felt the heat of its breath on my neck, the stench of decay filling my nostrils as I stumbled back. "Rook, we need to go," I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. But Rook wasn't moving. She was still standing there, her eyes wide with shock as one of the Skinwalkers reached for her. And that's when I saw it. Her skin, it wasn't real. It was peeling away, just like theirs. "No," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a freight train. "You're one of them." She turned to me, her face a twisted mix of regret and something else. Something monstrous. "I had no choice, Zero. she said, her voice low and filled with a strange sadness. It was either join them or die. I stared at her, my mind racing. Betrayed. Of course I'd been betrayed, just like I knew I would be. I was always right to be paranoid,